Should Tank have lost? Gervonta Davis versus Lamont Roach has just ended in a controversial majority draw, with there being mixed opinions on whether or not this was the right call. So was Tank versus Roach actually a robbery?
So this definitely was a very close fight overall. If you're just going round by round and scoring it for punches landed and the impact of them, and a lot of these rounds were definitely very close. However, there definitely were some major controversies in this fight that definitely should have swayed it one way. And we're going to get into that, but just off the bat, I think a lot of people saw during that fight Lamont Roach was really putting together the more impactful punches, was putting together better combinations in general. Of course, Tank was always still in there, was still having good moments, having good spurts of coming back, countering. But in general, we saw Lamont Roach rock Tank at different points. He was landing to the body very well and was really able to score for a lot of these rounds, I think. And that's what a lot of people think as well. Even taking away the controversies, I think a lot of people still had it sided for Roach.
Yeah, honestly, I'm not a fan of just throwing around the word robbery. Like we mentioned in a previous video on whether Bivol versus Better BF2 was a robbery, we didn't feel like that one was. And in terms of scoring, at the end of the day, it's subjective. We've talked about this before, but some people prefer the aggression, some people prefer the counter punching, some people prefer the volume, some people prefer the more accurate and cleaner shots. So if you have a fight that is this close, this competitive, this back and forth, neck and neck, it can get pretty dicey to score round by round. But in general, we saw the pace that Lamont Roach was doing a great job of not showing Gervonta way too much respect in this fight. He held his ground. He brawled in moments which you don't usually see being effective against Gervonta Davis. Usually guys are on their bike more, running around, trying to stay out of range, not get into exchanges. But Roach stuck to a solid game plan, and so did Gervonta. He was landing like triple left hands, just getting his foot on the outside and tripping Roach up. He had straight lefts to the body. But where this actually feels like a robbery isn't actually in the scoring, in my opinion. I felt like you could give it maybe a draw, maybe you could give it a slight edge to Lamont if anything. I didn't really see a Tank win, but some people just prefer that style, I guess, and thought he did a little bit more. I thought early on Roach was doing a good job, and he also came out strong later. But the real robbery, in my opinion, was that 9th round where Gervonta took a knee and the ref did not count it, and two of the judges actually gave the 9th round to Gervonta Davis instead of it being a 10-8 to Lamont Roach, which would have won in this fight.
Yeah, that's really the major sticking point here, and it's kind of just ridiculous, that whole situation in general. I mean, that would have been the major difference point in the scorecards. One judge had scored it for Tank Davis, but then the other two judges had scored it a majority draw. However, if Lamont Roach was rightfully given that knee, that 10-8 round for that knockdown, as Tank took the knee and it should have been awarded no matter what, then it would have been a majority decision for Lamont Roach, and he would have taken home the win and had become champion. But because of that massive controversy, that moment, the judges had scored it majority decision. And if you really want to look at a term robbery to have to do with this fight, it's definitely with that decision to not grant Lamont Roach the 10-8 round for that knee. Because you even saw the ref beginning to count out Tank, and then he just suddenly stops doing it for whatever reason and just allows Tank to go to his corner, wipe himself, to get the towel, and then commence back again. And you can even argue without that 10-8 in that round, Lamont Roach won the round because he was still putting on some good impactful punches.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just the fact that he took a knee, but the entire sequence was bizarre. The fact that his corner assisted him during an active round, they didn't score that a knockdown, they didn't take a point from Gervonta. So many things in that sequence were illegal. Automatically, from turning your back like that and going to your corner without the ref's discretion, like, you can honestly be disqualified for that if the ref didn't call time, which he eventually did after he started counting. So honestly, as much as I hate to say it, poor refereeing job in that 9th round. It should have been scored a knockdown. If you take a knee for whatever reason, whether it's to fix the hair, to wipe your eye because you got grease in it or whatever, if you go down on a knee and you take a break, not due to the ref's discretion or whatever, that is a 10-8 round. That is a knockdown, and I don't know how that wasn't scored. That's the real robbery in this fight.
Yeah, most definitely, and there's situations before where something similar has happened. There's been a clip floating around of Floyd Mayweather earlier into his career. He had a problem with his hand and just took a quick knee. The ref counted it at 10-8 for the other guy, and then he recommenced, and that's exactly what should have happened in this fight too. And now if you want to go to the punch stats, you could see throughout the whole fight, the main story is Lamont Roach was the more active fighter, but Tank was definitely the more accurate guy, landing more of the punches compared to what he threw. But however, Lamont Roach did end up landing more punches overall than Tank. And in those rounds, a lot of the time, it was close, the comparison of how many punches were being landed. And that's why I think there is so much controversy on who really won a lot of these rounds. But watching in the fight as well, there were so many moments in which Lamont Roach was being the aggressor, using his jab to stick Tank back, using calculated offense, but at the same time still staying disciplined. And there are a lot of clips out there of him landing some of the more impactful punches overall.
Yeah, Tank was getting stung by shots, and a lot of them came from being in the pocket too long. Tank gets comfortable there because that's where he has the most success in all of his fights, but Roach actually showed that he is a great counterpuncher. Now, Gervonta Davis is really known for his counterpunching ability and finding that shot on all his opponents, but Roach is really one of the only guys that he hasn't timed, hasn't put to the canvas like that, wasn't really able to find a shot or even rock Roach. If anything, the only person that was more rocked in this fight, neither were really rocked, but Roach landed the more impactful shots. He did a little bit more damage, in my opinion, in this fight. Now, that's not how fights are scored. Obviously, it is round by round judging, but it seemed like he did have control. I saw a graphic of a boxing AI comparing the effectiveness of both guys, with Roach landing more, having higher impact, throwing more, having more pressure, and pretty much equal aggression. So he did good work and just didn't back down from the fight.
As well, I think a lot of the corruption in terms of the controversies, like the knee, like a lot of the low blows Tank was throwing and some of the shady stuff, has to do as well with kind of, it is his promotion. And it's not like at the end of the day, with all the politics there are in boxing, they were gonna give Lamont Roach that fight. And for PBC, Tank is their biggest superstar, their biggest draw, their biggest attraction. So it's obviously not in their favor for him to lose against someone with little hype and not too much of a name like Lamont Roach. And it's just unfortunate that time and time again in boxing we see so much shade and corruption, when truly there's so many great underdog stories like this Lamont Roach fight, in which he fought as hard as he possibly could against an amazing fighter in Tank. So at the end of the day, it's really unfortunate that controversies can happen, such as the knee, but hopefully in the future something can finally change.
Yeah, I mean, Roach was gonna have to pretty much stop Gervonta if he wanted a decision here, because we know boxing politics, we know this sport. You're not just gonna come here and beat the star by decision. It is very hard to get a decision like this. You're gonna have to put on a masterclass type of performance, like Dimitri Bivol shut out Canelo, something like that, to get a win, because even that fight they scored it like 7-5 and it was not that close whatsoever. So Roach made this competitive and it was a draw at the end of the day. I felt like he got robbed. That knockdown should have been scored, and he should have won this fight. Pretty plain and simple. I feel like this was a robbery, as much as I don't really like to throw around that term. The fact that that knockdown stopped him from winning this fight, and that changed everything. That could have been a 10-8. Instead, it was a 10-9 to Tank. That's just insane to me, and I feel like this was just not the right decision.
But let us know down below who you think won this fight between Gervonta Davis and Lamont Roach. So leave a like, subscribe, and click the video on the screen for what's actually next for Gervonta Davis.